Welcome to Got Grass, conversations with the legends and leaders of bluegrass. You've enjoyed live bluegrass at Guitar Town CT concerts in Hampton, Connecticut since 2008. From Tony Rice, Rouse Stanley, and Doyle Lawson to Tim O'Brien, Sierra Hall, and Billy Strings. Now you can go behind the scenes as we chat with your favorite bluegrass stars. I'm your podcast host, Chris Worth. Well, hello. Today, my guest on Got Grass is Michael Cleveland. Welcome to Got Grass, Michael.
Hey, Chris. Thanks so much for having me.
I always start these interviews by asking the musicians how you would spend your day if you had nothing on your agenda and no musical instruments around.
Boy, that's kind of unheard of for me, to tell you the truth. I'd probably spend the day reading an audiobook. I'm a big like suspense thriller reader, so like I don't get to do that as much as I used to. It seemed to be when I was young, if I would get into a good audiobook, I could spend about all day just reading it, just finishing it. And so if I had a day like that with nothing to do, I'd probably be into that.
I'm guessing from your answer that you don't have too many days like that.
Not anymore. No.
So even though virtually everyone knows who you are, could you introduce yourself to our listeners, just a short bio for those who might not know your story?
Okay. Well, I'm Michael Cleveland. I'm from Henryville, Indiana, which is a small town in southern Indiana, just across the river from Louisville, Kentucky. And I am 43 years old. I've been playing the fiddle since I was 4 years old, and I guess you could say professionally since I was about 18. And I love it. It's all I've ever wanted to do.
What is it about bluegrass, Mike, that makes you love it so much?
Well, there's a few things, just, the sound of like the energy of bluegrass music has always been something that I've been fascinated with, like just the drive and intensity that good bluegrass music has is always something that I've really loved.
Mm.
And also the fact that it's a very approachable and I guess family oriented. I don't know if that's I guess the right words, but the fact that you can play on stage and be in a jam session possibly with some of your musical heroes and people that you've heard on records. I've always really been into the fact that, man, I always wondered how Stuart Duncan played this lick, and you play a festival that Stuart Duncan might be at, you could go up to him and ask him. You can't do that with any other kind of music that I know of. And the fact that, a lot of these bluegrass festivals, you'll see the people who were on stage earlier in the day, most of the time, uh, you would see them in a jam session and actually get to play a tune with them. And that was always really cool to me.
I mean, as a fan and a amateur promoter, the thing I love about music, bluegrass music, aside from the music, is that I can talk to you, a big bluegrass fiddle star, on the telephone. That you couldn't do that with any other form of music. You're right. I could never call up Sting or Paul McCartney and talk to him on the phone.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So your path to bluegrass stardom, I guess we would call it, I would call it, was obviously different than almost anybody else. Do you think that not being able to see maybe made other senses of yours more powerful for you?
I don't know, possibly. I've heard people say that, and that seems to be a common thing. But I never did think of it that way. I went to the school for the blind, the Kentucky School for the Blind in Louisville, and there everybody was, had some sort of visual impairment, so it wasn't a huge deal, and you weren't special because you were blind because everybody else was blind there. Even some of the teachers and people who worked there. So we just kind of it was just normal, and we learned to play or sing or whatever. There were a lot of great musicians in my school, and most of them never did anything professionally, but I mean there were some super talented people that I went to school with, and so it was just normal to learn to play by ear. A lot of the kids there, a lot of people there had perfect pitch. They could identify notes just by hearing it. And I learned how to do that. And that that there, like I can't tell you when the first time I was able to well, I guess I remember being in a practice booth at school, just practicing my violin, uh whatever thing I was working on, and I just realized that my fiddle was out of tune. And, I could hear that it was out of tune, and I could hear which note was out of tune and that it was flat, and so it wasn't something that anybody really learned, I don't think. I think you just when you get used to hearing the notes and what they sound like, I mean, I was able to identify those. And that was not uncommon at my school. A lot of people there could do that. So that was a huge thing for me as far as learning stuff because I didn't really have to hunt for it. I may have to learn how to play it. I may have to get it in my fingers, but as far as, I never did have to hunt around it. Man, I wonder what key he's in, wonder what note he starts from. I could always hear the notes. It was mainly just memorizing them and learning it, getting it in my fingers to play. But so yeah, it really, I guess you could say that, but I never really thought of it that way.
Do you stay in touch with any of your friends from those early days at the school?
A couple, I see a couple of them on Facebook, and I guess I missed my school reunion last weekend, but it was a weird thing with me because, I guess I was kind of the odd dude at school because a lot of the a lot of the kids there, the school became their life, and not, I don't know what their situations were at home or whatever, but that the school became their life, and a lot of them, they people came from all parts of Kentucky to go to the school for the blind. It was the Kentucky School for the Blind, so you had people from way down in eastern Kentucky, and then you had day students that who rode the bus from Louisville and, would go home every day and stuff like that. But um yeah, I'm sorry, what were you asking?
I
I'm
just was
so
asking
sorry.
if you stayed in touch with any of these
Oh
people
yeah.
over time.
No, I really haven't. And other than keeping up with a few of them on Facebook, I really haven't. And I think what I was trying to say is a lot of the kids there at school, the school became their life. Now they live in Louisville, and they work around or near the school, or some of them now work at school. But I was always more into music, so um, I was always ready to, you know, do what I needed to do at school, and then go play music on the weekends. So I was a little different in that regard.
Yeah. Did your family have a big influence on you musically or no?
Well, yeah, but not in a way that most people might think. You know, none of my family play at all. Uh, but my grandparents were big into bluegrass music, and they, a few years before I was born, started a bluegrass show in Henryville, Indiana, where I'm from. And so, uh, and then there were a few others that went on in the area, like my grandparents' show was every second, fourth Saturday. There'd be a show in Madison, Indiana every first Saturday. There'd be a show in Scottsburg, Indiana every third Saturday. And so when my grandparents weren't doing their show, they would always go to the other ones just because they liked the music and wanted to support it. And so I guess from what I've heard, you know, from around the time I was 6 months old, they would take me to these shows, and I would just always be around bluegrass. And uh, it was at one of those shows when I was about 4 years old that I heard the Orange Blossom Special for the first time, and that's when I knew I wanted to play the fiddle.
I was going to ask you, do you remember a specific time when you realized this is what you wanted to do for the rest of your life? Was it that when you were four hearing that song or?
Uh, at that time, you know, I just I was just so fascinated with that sound. I had to learn it, you know, but uh, I always hoped I could do it for the rest of my life, you know, and that I could do it for a living. But uh, and I guess that came from watching the Nashville network, TNN, when it used to be on in the 80s and early 90s, and seeing, you know, Doc Watson on there, and Ronnie Millsap, and, you know, like Ray Charles, and all these people, you know, who were visually impaired, who were playing music for a living. And uh, I guess around that time, I started thinking, man, it'd be great if I could ever get good enough to do this. And you know, it was never a sure thing. And I mean, I wanted to do it so bad. That was the only thing that I knew. Like, music was all I thought about when I got up in the morning all day. You know, like, if I wasn't playing music, it was the first thing I was thinking about. So, uh, but I never, like, my teachers at school, they would always say, you need to get something else to fall back on, and rightfully so, because there are so many good musicians, and, you know, a lot of them don't get the opportunities, or, you know, it's so much of this stuff is about word of mouth, being in the right place at the right time, you know, and there's just so many variables that you you never really know. It's always chance to take. But I always hope that I could do it for a living.
Yeah. Was there any big lucky break for you along the way that really changed your life in that regard that you can recall, or would you even call a lucky break? Maybe just a opportunity or something?
Yeah, I would say my first uh I guess introduction to the bluegrass community, which I've been going to a few festivals and contests. That was the one thing that my grandparents and parents did that I think really helped me as far as learning how to play, was not only going to our local shows, because I mean it's really easy to, well, not easy, but it's when you don't have anything to compare it to, you know, you can get to where you can play a little bit and you're pretty good in your own backyard. But when you go to these contests and things that aren't in your area, and you really get a sense of, man, some of these kids are really good. I mean, uh, like it really puts it in perspective where you are musically and the work that you have to do. So I have been able to go to a few contests, festivals, and but I remember when I was 13 years old, Pete Warnick called me, and he was putting together a band to play on the IBMA awards show in Owensboro in 1993. And he was looking for a band of kids because there had been an article in the Washington Post where somebody had said bluegrass is dying. There are no kids interested in the music, and it's pretty much, there aren't any young people interested in it anymore. And I'll have to say, when I was learning how to play and around this area, there were no kids, and a lot of the people that I was around were a lot older than me, and it was just the way it was. I didn't think anything about it, but now I'm very happy to say that there are tons of kids that are not only learning how to play, but just phenomenal musicians already. But uh, so I guess that was my first introduction to the bluegrass community. I had been in a jam session at a local festival here in Louisville with Josh Williams. And his dad, Tony, I think was the one that suggested me to Pete Warnick when putting together that band. And so I remember going to IBMA that year and meeting all the people that I'd heard on tapes and records, CDs, and it was just so much more than I could have possibly imagined. And so I'd say that was my first. Oh yeah, and some of that was uh, filmed for a video documentary called "Gather at the River," and it's since been used on a couple other videos like Bluegrass Journey and maybe another one. But that that segment on the awards show with the Bluegrass Youth All Stars, and then after the awards show, uh, I ended up getting in a jam session with Doc Watson, Tim O'Brien, Dan Crary, Pete Warnick, Beppy Gambetta, a bunch of people just sitting around playing. And my dad asked if I could play a couple tunes with them, and I ended up jamming about an hour and got to meet Doc and talk to him, and some of that ended up on that video. So I would say that was definitely the first introduction into the bluegrass community, and it never fails. Everywhere we play, even when I started playing with Dale Ann Bradley, which was my first gig out of high school, I would have people come up to me. I got a video of you when you were 13 years old, playing wheelhouse with the Youth All Stars and talking to Doc Watson. So yeah, I would say that was the first one.
So at that point in your life, if you can recall, were you nervous playing with all these heroes, or were you just so excited that you were
I
doing it?
was so excited, and I was just, man, I look back on it now and I wish I could get that back. Because, like, when you're a kid, or at least me anyway, I was just so excited about the music, and I was oblivious of, like thinking about, I didn't think in the terms of, oh man, I'm playing with Bill Monroe, or I'm playing with Doc Watson, or, like now. I might be a little nervous about it, but at that time, it was like, of course I'm playing with Bill Monroe. Of course I'm playing with Doc. This is what I want to do. And I had that. I don't. I don't know. I was just so excited about it that it was. I was just all about it. And I didn't, the first time I played the Grand Ole Opry, I wasn't nervous a bit. Every other time I played the Grand Ole Opry, I've been nervous. But you know, when you're 13 and you're so into it, you know, I just didn't think about it at that time.
Yeah. I recently talked to Bryan Sutton on this podcast, and he was thinking back. He said the thing that most bothered me is I felt like I wasn't sure I really belonged with these people. I was younger, and I really was kind of doubting whether I even should have been there. But I guess you never had that self-doubt. Maybe you were too young to even have
Yeah.
self-doubt.
I mean, I've had things like that since, but yeah, when I was a kid, I mean, it was all I thought about. And, you know, like if I'd be sitting around just playing around at my grandparents' house, I mean, I would pretend I was on the Grand Ole Opry. You know, I would pretend I was Scotty Stoneman playing the fiddle. I would, you know, it just was, you know, all I thought about.
It's funny. I was born in 1953. I was 10 when the Beatles came on Ed Sullivan, and my brothers and I used to get old wooden tennis rackets and floor lamps and take the shades off so there'd be microphones. We didn't play, we were just fooling around. And we would pretend to be the Beatles and sing along with our tennis rackets
Yeah.
and into the light bulbs. But I was just as passionate about that music as you were about bluegrass. I guess I just couldn't get enough of it.
Yep.
Yeah. So, in looking back at your life, would you have any advice for your younger self now, like life
Oh,
lessons?
um, boy, that's a tough one. I don't know.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I have to think about that one.
Okay. I'm going to move on to something totally different, which is your playing style and your rhythm chop on the fiddle. I saw you first at the Salem Barn in Connecticut with a band with Darrell Webb, Jesse Brock, Jesse Baker, and Marshall Wilborn, and
Yeah.
I was amazed at your chop. It was almost like you're swinging your bow around like a sword, and don't get in the way. And how did that come about? That just always been your style?
I guess so, you know. I've never really been great at using my wrist. You know, like a teacher told me at school one time, you'll never be able to play anything fast playing the way you do. And I guess I proved her wrong. But I
Yeah.
just never and everybody, you know, I had somebody come up to me the other day. It's like, man, how do you play? How do you not have tennis elbow or something, you know? And I mean, I don't know how to describe it, but you know, it's always, even though it doesn't look that way, it's definitely relaxed, or you know, it's definitely not tight, you know. But as far as my chop, um, I was just always into uh the sound of somebody who had a great chop, whether it was fiddle chop or a mandolin chop or a banjo chop. You know, I used to hear Adam Steffi chop with Alison Krauss, and I used to think, man, you know, could you make a fiddle chop sound that big? You know, I mean, his chop is as big as a house. Sam Bush, when he chops the mandolin, uh, Bill Monroe, his mandolin chop. One of the things that really struck me when I played with J.D. Crowe a few times, and Earl, and Butch Robbins is another guy that can do this, and not very many banjo players, but that have a big sounding chop. Like not only big sounding, but the groove is such that you can play things that you normally don't play. See, a lot of people focus on the chop, like the way it looks or the way it sounds or whatever. But the main thing about chopping or playing any kind of rhythm is you have to groove. And if you don't groove, it doesn't matter what kind of chop you have because, it's pointless. If you're not adding to the energy and defining the groove of the band, like when Sam Bush chops the mandolin, he doesn't follow. He has a, when you hear those pickup notes, the intro of the song, that sets the tempo and you put it there and you keep it there. And, you don't want to rush, you don't want to drag, but you want to be on the edge. You want to be on the top of the beat. Or, in the case of playing a chop like that, on the back, you're playing on the back beat where the snare drum would play. And, I always thought, number one, I want to make my chop as big sounding as I can. But apart from that, it's got to fall in the right place. And you want a chop that is so supportive that it will make the people around you play better. And that's what I've always enjoyed playing with, and so therefore that's what I've always tried to do. But
Yeah.
it's not it's all about timing. If you don't have good timing, you don't have anything.
I was talking to Todd Phillips, one of the earlier podcasts I did. We were talking about bass playing and how his bass playing changed over the years. And he said, I was talking to this funk rhythm soul bass player named James Jamerson. I guess played a lot of stuff in Motown and so forth. And he said to me, he said, never mistake a rut for a groove. And I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah,
The groove is where it's at, but it's funny. The difference between a rut and a groove is so subtle, but you can certainly tell when it's one or the other.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, one of my things is like you'll hear mandolin players go from a straight chop and they'll try to go into a more syncopated chop like, maybe something Sam Bush would do. But the difference is, most of the time when people try to do that, the timing drags, you know. So it's not, it's like, oh yeah, I'm doing this cool chop and I've, changed into this other rhythm, but you're also dragging down the band because you're all, you've already screwed up the groove of the song. So, the thing about Sam Bush is not what he can do, is just like he knows exactly when to do it, the appropriate time, to play a syncopated chop. And where it falls on the beat, it's not going to drag, it's not going to rush, it's going to be there.
Remember when I heard you at the Salem Barn with that band, which was a great band, and you played so many songs so fast. Do you still enjoy playing that speed? It's kind of people associate, really fast fiddle tunes with you. And
Yeah.
you do play them. Do you still enjoy playing at that tempo, or are you calm down a bit as you get older?
Well, yeah, I mean, I enjoy playing, I'll put it this way. I enjoy playing fast songs fast. Sally Gooden is not a fast song. So, like when I play Sally Gooden, I don't play it breakneck speed. But Fire on the Mountain, if you're going to play it, you got to play it fast. That's like Orange Blossom Special. If you don't play it fast, it's the most boring, repetitive thing in the world. But like I I just have always thought, like if it's supposed to be a fast song, Fire on the Mountain, Cream 45, Bluegrass Breakdown, Orange Blossom Special, any of those type tunes, you got to play them fast. But do I enjoy playing everything fast? No. And there was probably a time when I did, when I was a little kid, and I know that's what I'm associated with is fast. But I do think that there's a lot more to music than playing fast, and I don't think that every song should be played at breakneck speeds.
One other thing Todd Phillips was talking about, I asked him, how has your bass playing changed over the years that he's played? And he said, I play less notes and I try to play the right notes. When I listen back to what I used to play when I was in my 20s, I was all over the bass playing so many notes. And he said, I really try to just play the right note for the song now. And that's how I approach. Has your approach to fiddle playing changed over the years?
Oh
Besides,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and I know exactly what he's talking about, you know. But then I'll have to say there are times where I'll find an old tape or something and be listening back to, and it's like, man, that's cool. I'd have never played it that way now. You know, so I guess it kind of goes both ways. But yeah, I play a lot different now than uh, what I did, say, 20 years ago, I would think. And it's kind of weird, though, on that same on that same topic, is, you change things subtly over the years, or I do, uh, like if it's something we recorded, I don't know, 10 or 15 years ago on an album, I might play it and think that I'm playing it note for note the way I played it on the record. And I used to teach a little bit, and people would ask me, hey, play this break that you played on Blue Eyed Darling on your uh the Flamekeeper Leaving Town album. And I would play it and I would think I was playing it note for note like the record. Then I would go back and listen to the record and I had changed it, and it was so gradual that I didn't even realize that I had changed a bunch about it.
Um, when you're sitting around at home, are you more likely to be playing the mandolin, fiddle, or guitar if you're just have a day off and noodling around playing music? Or
Oh man, I love playing mandolin and guitar. I don't really get a chance to do it as much as I would like, but yeah, I really enjoy playing. Uh, and it used to be when I was sitting around at home. Now I record a lot, even when I'm off. People send me tracks to play on, and I have a little home studio set up in my basement, so I do a lot of that. So I'm playing a lot of fiddle every day, and but if it was just me playing along with a CD or something, man, there's nothing better than playing rhythm guitar to a great CD or live show or something. That's really what I used to get into was uh is find a good bluegrass live show on, Sugar Megs or something like that, and play along, play rhythm guitar with it.
uh, that Sugar Megs was amazing. I don't know how many Tony Rice concerts I listened to on that. Hundreds. It was
Oh
great.
man, it's great. And yeah, you can find just about anything you want. And I mean, there's a lot of stuff that people are putting on YouTube now that I think is great. Uh, because you used to have to really. I mean, this was back in the days where you really had to track that stuff down. I used to be super into live shows, and uh, you trade with different people, and a lot of that stuff is now available to listen to, which I think is great.
I guess in some ways, YouTube has been a godsend for musicians learning how to play.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, man, if I, there was no slowing anything down when I was a kid. Like even the trick with the record player that you hear people talk about. I mean, I didn't know how to do that. Where you
Yeah.
slowed it down and tuned your instrument down with it or
Yeah.
whatever. Now we had a talking book cassette player that a lot of our library books came on at school, and you could change the speed, but it would lower the pitch. And so, with YouTube and being able, and all these other apps like, you know, uh, AnyTune Pro and, all these things where you can slow something down without changing the pitch. Man, that's huge.
You you might not remember. I was going to ask you about this, but you played up here at Guitar Town at a Unitarian church in 2011 with you had Charlie Cushman on the banjo. Tom Adams, I think, was playing guitar. Jesse
Oh
Brock
yeah.
and Marshall. Since you don't really have visual clues, how do you remember the venues you play in? Is there a way you can differentiate them in your mind, or how do you do that? Or
Boy,
don't you
that's a
remember
good
them?
question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there are a few venues that I think I would know where I was playing, even if somebody said, "Okay, we're going to play," and never really said where. Like, the Grand Ole Opry is one. Bean Blossom, Indiana is one, and I think a lot of it to me is places that I played a lot over the years, or that have a certain vibe or feeling about them. But yeah, like it's hard to remember every place, but I do think that there are quite a few that I would know, even if I didn't know where I was playing, I would be able to guess.
Yeah. Do different venues, I guess, who would have just different sound, maybe a different smell, different everything that you could maybe
Oh yeah,
lock into?
yeah, and they do. It's interesting. Um, even where we play today, and we use in-ear monitors. And the big thing about in-ear monitors is that you can kind of control them yourself, and your mix is consistent. Well, it is consistent, but every room is still different. So that's why you still do sound check. And that's why every room, like it's very rare that we will play a place where I won't change something from what I had the last time, just because the room itself just has its own sound.
Right. Do you enjoy playing in a group, say recording or rehearsing in a circle with one mic, or is that just too much work these days? Is it easier just to have everybody separately mic'd and have them mixed?
Yeah, I mean, if you're just sitting around in a circle rehearsing, and putting the mic up, that's one thing. Now we don't do the one mic system. I know a lot of bands do well with that, and Dell, that's what they used for a long time, and it's not only good musically and very consistent, but it's a good visual show, and people moving in and out uh, of the mic and around each other to play solos. That's not anything that we've ever tried to do, and I don't know that I would ever be completely comfortable doing it that way.
Seems like some of the younger bands are kind of getting back to that old style. As you say, as an audience member, when you see them step in and out, and there's the fiddle player is not poking anybody's eye out, but they're all singing. It's quite a exciting thing to see.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. But the one thing that I always um noticed, when I would watch Doyle or Del McCurry when he was doing the one mic thing, there would be instances, not all the time, but there would be times where it was like, man, you can't really, if the whole thing was just a little bit louder. Like it's hard to get that one mic system uh, up loud in a really loud venue, and that's the only drawback to it. If you're playing in a theater where everybody's quiet and listening, then it works great. And there's probably gear that you could get now that would make it happen. But uh, that's the only downside. to it. Is
Sure.
actually getting the volume up there in some places that I've noticed.
These days, do you prefer being the band leader or a band member, or does it depend on the group and the occasion?
Well, I guess it depends on uh, the occasion. I guess I've always had opinions of how I like music to be or whatever, but I never really set out to be a band leader. I guess you could say I just fell into that. And the reason I did is I was playing. I've been making these solo albums from the time I was playing with Rhonda Vincent to uh, when I went back with Dale Ann Bradley. I recorded these albums for Rounder, Flamekeeper, Let Her Go Boys, and um, I always liked playing that kind of music. And especially with those people, Audie Blaylock and Jesse Brock and Jason Moore and Tom Adams or Charlie Cushman or Pete Kelly. There was a groove that those guys had, and that really just set that music off, and to me, and it was that kind of Jimmy Martin, definitely Jimmy Martin influenced groove, and it was. And I'll have to say, it's still some of the best music I've ever played. And I played a lot of music. But um, so around 2006, Dale Ann wasn't playing a lot. We didn't have a lot of dates for the summer. And I remember talking to Audie and a few of the guys and saying, what would you all think about maybe booking a few shows just as a special thing to do every once in a while, and see what happens. And they were like, "Yeah, we'd love to do that." So um, that's kind of how it started. We did a showcase. I think it was at Spigma in Nashville, and our booking agent at the time, or soon to be booking agent, Jim Rowe, who was just starting out as a booking agent, really. He had worked for Skaggs Family Records before, and a couple other record labels in Nashville, and then decided to become a booking agent. He heard us do one of these showcases, and he came up to me and he said, "This is what you need to be doing right here. This is what you love, and you can tell it, and this is what you need to be doing." And I've had a lot of help, as far as uh, running a band. My dad has been huge in helping me, with logistics, keeping the books, everything. I've always had a great booking agent. I've got a great publicist in Kimberly Williams. All this stuff that a lot of people starting the band, like I know people who do it all themselves, and I look at that and I think, man, there's no way I'd be able to do that. And I really admire the people who can and can still keep their head in the music. But uh, so I guess musically, yeah, I enjoy being a band leader. I enjoy, you know, working out songs and having ideas for arrangements or how to put a show together or things like that. But yeah, not all the time. I mean, I most of the time I just want to be one of the guys.
Yeah. This question might be into your memory bank a bit, but what was the nicest compliment that you can remember ever getting as a musician? Anything stick out?
Oh man. I don't know,
Did Doc Watson ever say anything to you when you met him when you were young? Did he give you any advice or encouragement?
Well, yeah, he gave me a lot of, you know, advice over the year. Like we were never super close, but he definitely encouraged me to keep going with it. But I would say anytime that you get a compliment from one of your peers, like, I mean, you were talking about Bryan Sutton. The more I've been around that guy and see how he plays, and as many sessions and things as he's been a part of, I mean, just I've gained more respect even for Bryan Sutton after playing uh, in Bela's My Bluegrass Heart Band. And anytime somebody like that says "good job," which like it's not, it doesn't sound like a lot, but it's like wow. Uh, when somebody you respect thinks enough of something that you've done to say that, even, I mean, they don't, they don't say that, take that stuff lightly. You know what I mean?
Yes, I
But
do.
I can't think of one specific thing. Uh, but anytime uh, somebody like that says, good job or good idea or whatever, I know they're not just saying it, and it must be good. Or I must have done okay.
Yeah,
If
right.
they're saying that.
Yeah. Is there anyone, Mike, in the past history of bluegrass that you would have enjoyed playing with? Somebody who's no longer around, but you would have loved to have the chance to form with?
Bill Monroe,
Yeah.
Flat Scruggs, the Johnson Mountain Boys. Uh, Musically, when it was really good at certain times, Jimmy Martin. I mean, Jimmy Martin is his own guy. And I I don't think I would enjoy being in his band per se, but when the music was really good, I would have. I always wish that I could have played in that. I always wished I could have played with Tony Rice. I was supposed to one time, and he did show up. So,
Yeah.
uh, but that, yeah, I would say I've been very fortunate though. I've been able to play with a lot of the people that I grew up listening to and my heroes, and I know a lot of people can't say that. It blows my mind that our banjo player, Josiah Strode, he's never met J.D. Crowe. And J.D., anytime I was ever around him, he was just a normal dude. And I mean, he definitely had ideas about music, or well, obviously, but with with all that he had done in his music, he was just such a down to earth guy. And I could say the same thing about Sam Bush. Anytime I hang out with Sam Bush, he's always got a story to tell, that you haven't heard. And like the first time I met Sam, it was just like you meet somebody at the, you know, at a local jam session or something. Probably because we knew a lot of the same people being around Louisville, Kentucky. But yeah, as far as people I wish I could have played with, I'd have to say Tony Rice, Bill Monroe, Jimmy Martin at times, the Johnson Mountain Boys, which I actually got to do a couple of tribute shows. They were really fun with Dudley, David, Marshall, and Richard Underwood, and that was really cool getting to do that.
When you're out on the road, this is a non-musical question, but do you have a certain kind of favorite food that you like to search out if you're traveling somewhere, either in the U.S. or abroad? Do
Oh
you,
man,
I've got,
I'm a pizza snob.
oh,
Yeah, I'm big into the pizza. As far as New York pizza, oh man, I could go to New York and eat pizza pretty much every day for a week. And it just I follow this guy on YouTube, this Barstool Barstool Sports, he does these pizza reviews where he'll
Oh, yeah.
go all over the place and do these short reviews of the restaurant and the places we go that he's hit. I'll every once in a while I have to look up. It's like, oh yeah, we're in New York. Which New York I kind of know, and I get that from my mom because she's from New Jersey originally, and uh, but yeah, I would say pizza would be my go to travel food in certain places, and maybe barbecue.
It's funny because when you played here in Hamden, which is right next to New Haven is considered by New Haveners as the best pizza in the world. Uh,
Yes, and
we have,
I have recently discovered that. I did not know that until here in the last few months or so watching that guy's videos, but I got to get back to New Haven.
yeah, you do. And I'm telling you that the best
Pepe's and
place
Sally's, right?
that well, I'm going to tell you right now, the Sally's is the best pizza in New Haven.
That's what I've heard.
Pepe's used to be up there. They've franchised out and become a big corporation with lots of places around everywhere. And I feel like Sally's in New Haven is the best. But you got to come back up here and see for yourself.
Oh, I'd love to. I was talking to this guy who's a big hiker, and they had done this super long hike, and they ended up in New Haven, and he was a pizza guy, and he said, I'm going to both of them today, and we're watching the ball game or the Super Bowl or whatever it was, and I'm going to get a pizza from Pepe's and I'm going to get one from Sally's, and I'll let you know which one's the best. And that's what he said too. He said Sally's was by far the best.
Yeah, it is. Um, this might seem like a weird question. It might be a hard question, but it's not really supposed to be a hard question. So, looking back on your life and career, is anything about yourself that you would change if you could? Uh, so I'm not really saying, well, I would have been born with sight. Maybe that is the thing. I'm just curious if there's anything about your personal life or growing up or music that you, looking back, would change.
Well, I guess I guess it could go both ways. At times I wish that I would have taken a little bit more seriously when I was in my 20s and early 30s, and but then there's a part of me that wishes that I didn't take it as seriously at times now. Like when I was a kid and I was too stupid to be nervous. There's a part of that I wish I could get back. It's like, man, just whatever the situation is. And it's not that I get, you know, super nervous or, stage fright or anything like that. But I think um, not that I didn't care about it before, but, you start thinking about things more and what is actually involved or at stake. Like, uh, it's not only, man, I want to play good, but it's like, well, it's my band, and I really hope we play good, and and uh, and it's the Grand Ole Opry, or it's this, or it's that, and this could mean so much if it goes well. This could mean a lot for my career or future. It's like you start thinking about things a little more, or I do now than I did say 20 years ago. And so uh, I guess I could say a little bit of both. I wish sometimes that I had the freedom of just playing at times and not really thinking about anything else and not caring about it. But at the same time, there were situations 20 or so years ago that if I'd have really thought about things, I would have probably done something different.
Um, I assume that good as you are, you probably have a bad night now and then. When you have a bad night, would anyone beside you notice? Would the audience
Yeah,
notice?
that's a that's a good question. I don't know. It kind of depends on the situation, but your worst night is always just bad to you. But yeah, to say a lot of times though, like we'll play a show as a band and collectively be like, "Oh God, that was awful," like,
Uh,
and we record all the shows either from one of us will catch a voice memo from our pocket or something on stage, or our audio engineer Kurt will record the show, and a lot of times, it's like we'll have a show that doesn't feel great, and and it'll be like, "Oh man, that was awful." And then you go back and listen to it, and it's not really as bad as you thought. And a lot of the time that is the case. But the thing that I've learned is whether you like it or not, it is what it is. Like there's no way to go back and change it. There's no way. Um, all you can do is practice. Like the thing I learned playing with Bela Fleck is that, I mean, you can practice and practice and practice. And, I did. I practiced that stuff a lot. And still, I would screw stuff up, but so would everybody else. And it was very refreshing to see that. I mean, Bela would screw up. And it was like, okay, this is normal. Everybody does this. It's not just me. But my buddy Andy Statman, I was talking to him one time and he's like, I got a practice routine and I practice a lot. But, when I go out on stage, it just happens. Whatever happens, happens. And you have to take it as that. It's a live performance.
mhm.
So, it's really not supposed to be perfect. And, some of my favorite records or even well, the old records, that's essentially what they were live performances. And, some of that stuff isn't perfect and it stood the test of time.
You as a fiddle player, what would constitute a bad night? Would it be, I don't know, hard to imagine what you would consider a bad night for you personally.
Well, there's a joke I heard, how do you tell when a fiddle is out of tune? When the bow is moving. So
Okay.
I'd say as far as fiddle playing goes, not being able to play in tune, that's one of my big things, is playing double stops and trying to get them as in tune as I possibly can. And nights when it's not working, I guess it's when I don't feel like I'm playing in tune. Or there's some times when I play that I feel like my brain and my hands are connected, where I can just think and play and it just happens. And a lot of my stuff, I some of the stuff I play the same way every time, but I've always been big into improvising, and that's always been one of my favorite things about fiddle players like Scotty Stoneman or Randy Howard or people like that. The Stewart, I guess you could say. You just never know what might happen, and so there's times where I really feel like, yeah, my brain uh, and my hands are connected today. And then there's times where I'll think of ideas and I go to play them, and Even though I think I know what the notes are or whatever, they just don't seem to work as well. So I try to always get to that place where they're connected, if that makes any sense.
I think a lot of fiddle players listening to this, hopefully they will be what's the word? The fact that you think your fiddle playing sometimes isn't in tune and you struggle with it will be encouraging to them when they're learning. Like, well, even he sometimes feels like he's just not getting it right.
Well, and it's very subjective because like I'll play something on stage, and it could be how the mix is in my ear or uh listening from the room or whatever. You think you're playing in tune, and then you listen back to it, and you're like, "Oh God, I wasn't even close." And that's the good thing about the studio. Like my buddy Bill Wolf, I had a local band one time, and we did a record, and he had never been in the studio, and uh, and I remember him saying, "Man, the studio don't lie." When we went to do vocals, and yeah, and it doesn't because it picks up every little thing, every little imperfection in your playing is there and magnified. So, the only thing you can do is take that and learn from it. And you'll hear yourself doing these things that you don't even realize you do. And that's what's been so great for me doing all these sessions and spending so much time in the studio at home. Uh, but yeah, it's really subjective.
Right. You mentioned Tim O'Brien. Tim has played up here at Guitar Town, I think, 7 or 8 times over the 16, 17 years. And I interviewed him for the podcast, and I said, Tim, I love watching you play and sing as a solo artist, whatever. But my favorite thing is when you start a song and you forget the lyrics and have to start over or make something up. I said that as an audience member, you feel like, wow, this is another human being and he actually screwed up. And it's great because you say
Yes,
it's not perfect. It's music. I,
right.
I always
And
love
Tim
that.
O'Brien's one of the best musicians on the planet. I mean, just it's just so natural with uh, everything that he does. Just seems like it's the easiest thing in the world.
Mhm. Yeah,
But but yeah, there's something to that, man. It's real.
real. Yeah. I guess that's the thing about music that people connect with more than any other, even more than speech. I think music is connects to people because it's human to human. It's real. Uh, I've always thought that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Tim's kind of one of those guys, and I'll have to say this about Brian Sutton too. There's a lot of people who can play a lot of notes, and those two guys can do it. I mean, Tim and Brian Sutton. But the musicians that really get me is like there's a lot of substance to what they play. It's stuff that evokes. It's not just a bunch of flash. It's something that goes somewhere and contributes to the song and really takes you to that place rather than well, that's a cool triplet or that's a cool lick or whatever. And that's something I've noticed a lot here in the last. When I was younger, I think I might have focused more on the technical end of, oh man, you just did this fast flurry of notes or complicated double stops or whatever. But now it's I pay more attention to, man, not only was that a super cool lick or solo, but it just elevated the song in a way that I never thought was possible.
Yeah. I was talking to Clay Hess, one of these podcast interviews, and I asked him about his guitar playing over time, how it's changed. And he said, I really try to play more melody now and less flashiness. That was his take on his evolution.
Yeah. Yep. And
Yeah.
I think you just change as you get older. Um it it's it's weird. Well, you go talk about Bryan Sutton, me and a buddy of mine talk about this all the time. I mean, you go back and listen to Bryan Sutton play with Ricky Skaggs, which was great. And I mean, it was mind blowing. Like there weren't a lot of guitar players playing like that, and he was just the guy. But you listen to Bryan Sutton play then, and listen to what he plays now, and you know, although what he played then was super impressive and great, I feel like there's a lot more substance to his playing now, like a lot more thought and well, I don't know I don't know the correct word for it, but it's just interesting to hear as a comparison.
Oh, right. Well, I'm going to end this with one last question, which is not really a musical question. I hope it won't be a puzzling one, but is there anything that people would be surprised to learn about you?
Hmm. Uh
That's usually a hard question, actually, for people at the end. I've noticed.
yeah, I don't know. I don't know about that one.
Okay, fair enough. And I also ask people this question, but I think for you, I already know the answer. If you have a week off from music, where are we going to find you? But it sounds like you don't ever have a week off from music, so that might be a moot question.
I think about taking a vacation every once in a while, but man, I just love to play, and uh, I've taken vacations before, and I'll be in New York or something, and sure enough, I'll hear about a jam or something that's going on. I just always loved to play, even when I first started playing out on the road. My thing was, oh man, I get to play these bluegrass festivals with all these bands, and I just thought everybody jammed after the show. Like, oh man, there's gonna be all these killer jam sessions, and we're just gonna play constantly. And I was so bummed out for a while because we play the show, and then everybody want to go to the hotel, drink beer or whatever. Of course, I was kind of into that too, but there was a part of me that was always, it's like, man, are we gonna jam?
Um, I'm going to ask you one more quick question. There's a local fiddle player named Austin Scelzo who's becoming quite a uh, up and coming bluegrass, both fiddler and educator, jam leader, teacher. And he's jammed with you a couple of times and likes to put it up on Facebook all the time. I don't know if you know Austin or remember Austin.
Yeah, I know Austin. Yeah.
He's in his mid 20s and he's a local guy here. And um, I'm going to tell him that I talked to you. He'll probably want to listen to the podcast. He's a really nice guy.
Yeah.
Nice guy. Well, these podcasts are really fun for me. I've been able to chat with a lot of my bluegrass heroes, and this certainly is no exception. So I want to thank you, Michael Cleveland, for taking time to chat today.
Yes, sir. Thanks so much for having me.
Good luck with all your project. I know you have a project with Jason Carter. I'm looking forward to hearing that one.
We do. We actually have a single coming out this Wednesday.
Awesome. Awesome. Um, well, say hi to him. He was one of the first interviews I did here, and also I interviewed his soon-to-be wife, Bronwyn. So, uh, um,
Yeah.
yeah. I hope to see you up here in Connecticut sometime. Maybe make sure you get a Sally's Pizza if you come up.
I know, man. I need to do it.
All right, Michael. Have a great day. Thanks for talking.
All right. Thanks so much.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye.
I hope you enjoyed our podcast, and thanks for listening. Visit our website, guitartownct.com, for concert and podcast schedules, or just to send us a message. We'd love to hear from you.